Hello, and thank you for stopping by the Stuff I Heard podcast. I am your host, Joshua Peak, and today is February the 6th, 2019. I want to thank everybody for listening to the last couple of interviews that I've done and apologize a little bit for the podcast that I did with Byron Covington. I want to apologize to him and to the listeners. I had way too much caffeine in preparation of him coming. I knew that he was bringing some coffee from that veteran-owned Black Rifle Coffee Company. And I was excited, looking forward to it, but also I was a bit groggy that morning and thought, well, I need a little boost. I need to give myself a little bit of caffeine. So I'd actually had 2 cups of coffee before he even showed up, and I didn't eat breakfast. And then when he got here, I started drinking the coffee, and then as we were recording, my brain was firing in so many directions that I really couldn't concentrate on what I was going to talk about. And Byron come in the door, and he and I know each other. Like, we've talked before, we've hung out before. It's a very easy conversation normally between us. But I think that he perhaps was a little bit intimidated by being on camera. That's really not something that I think about a lot because I do so much of this. I just hit record and go. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable speaking in front of people or being in a setting where the things that they say can be heard again, I guess you'd say. I had heard a podcast a while back, because this is the Stuff I Heard podcast. I heard a podcast a while back with Whitney Cummings talking to Joe Rogan on his podcast, and she said the reason that people are so uncomfortable speaking in front of groups is because back when people were very tribal and they lived in small groups, you would normally just be in the community. And if you were ever brought in front of the group, it was because you'd done something wrong and you were being judged and you had to plead your case. So you would be in front of your peers and you would be pleading for them not to, excommunicate you from the group or to punish you in some way for something that you've done. And she was using that analogy as to how strange it is to do stand-up comedy, where you basically stand in front of strangers and come up with the craziest premises and stories to make them laugh. And everything in that type of chemistry of what you're doing throws up red flags of, this feels weird, I shouldn't be doing this isn't comfortable. And a lot of people can't do it because of that. They really do feel uncomfortable and they go, this isn't for me. And in a way, I sort of admire stand-up comedians because they have that ability, because they can, sometimes without any preparation, get up and just speak. Now, this is different. What I'm doing is completely different because I know that at any time, if I say something that I don't want to have in there, I can just hit stop and start over. But in a way, I sort of make myself go out on a limb, and like right now, I'm recording on the anchor.fm page. When I do that, there is no editing. It's just hit record, talk, and that's it. And I don't want to get 30 minutes into it and say something and be like, crap, I shouldn't have said that. So in a way, it's sort of measured what I say. But, in the case of having someone with an interview, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do it in GarageBand. And, if you don't have GarageBand, you can also use a program called Audacity. I've heard people using it. It's very similar to GarageBand. But apparently you can just, lay down your track, and then if you need to go back and find a little clip of a moment that you want to delete, you can just go in there and clip it and delete it. So, I did both interviews with him and with Kyle Hardy on GarageBand, and I had the ability to go back and delete it if necessary. But they really didn't say anything that needed to be gone, and everything went smooth, and I thought it sounded good. But again, going back and listening to the one with Byron, you can tell that I had way too much caffeine, and there were times where we were spinning ourselves out of control. He felt a little bit nervous being on the podcast, and I don't know, we just didn't. It felt to me like we didn't get into a flow, which I wanted to do, and we're going to work on that. I'm going to have him back on. We talked about a few things that I want to talk about further. I had even said out loud, remind me to talk about Dodge with Byron, and I didn't do it. I also want to talk to him about women in the military, the decision on whether or not to put women on the front lines in the Marine Corps. there's a lot of discussion on those types of issues now. And most recently, I saw a headline that said, if there is supposed to be equality in the military, then why aren't we also requiring women to register for the draft just like we do men? And that's a good question. That's an honest question. I mean, in today's society, if there is such a push for equality, why are we then separating? You know, we live in a duality type society where we say that yes, you can do anything, and yes, you should be allowed to do anything, but no, you can't do this because of what? Because it's been set that way. Years ago, this little inside baseball. Years ago, I dated a girl, and we had dated for a while, and she told me, she said, I know a lot of women, including your mom, are professionals, and they want to have a career, and they want to have their name out there and be able to accomplish things and stuff like that. And she's like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be able to take care of the house and the kids and you and take care of things here in the house. And so when you come home, dinner's ready and everything's good to go, and you don't have to worry about dealing with any of this crap. And she said, you know, this was after we were adults, after we had already, you know, she and I had been married before to other people and had gone through divorces, and we were having this conversation as adults. And she goes, you know, I just realized that not everybody's alike. Not everybody wants a career, and I'm one of those people. I would rather stay at home and make a home. And you know, it's very interesting to try and hear that point of view, especially coming from a household where my mom was a overachiever type career person who, you know, basically all her life was told she couldn't do things because. You can't do that because you're a girl. You can't do that because you're a nurse. You can't do that because you're a nurse practitioner. And every time she was faced with one of those challenges of people saying, you can't do that because, she went, oh yeah, watch me. And she overcame those odds, and she accomplished the things that very few people ever do. And I didn't really have an example of someone who was a stay-at-home type mom, except for my grandparents. My grandmother, on both sides, at a certain point, were kind of stay-at-home type people. Not to say that they didn't have jobs. They did have jobs. I remember both grandparents actually working in sewing factories, and you know, my nana also did a little bit of work doing some agricultural type stuff. But you know, sewing factories were big in the South, especially for ladies, and it was something that I remember both of them doing. My dad's got stories of my Granny Peak coming home from work, and she'd had an industrial sized needle in a machine that ran through her finger, and they had to patch her up. And as a matter of fact, my granny, I think she and I were talking one day. I think it was around her 80th birthday, and she made a comment about the fact that she had burned her fingers so much working in the sewing factory that she had no fingerprints. And she was like, look, and I mean, it was just as smooth as you could be. There was no fingerprint at all. And she said, you know, I've had needles go through almost every finger on both hands. And she said, you know, it's just how we made a living. It's how we grinded it out. But at a certain point, she was able to be a stay-at-home type lady and take care of the family. And, you know, it really struck me as odd to have that conversation with this person, and I thought, could I do that? Would I be comfortable with that? Because I didn't know that kind of life. And there is sort of a part of it that seems romantic and idealistic and, you know, Norman Rockwell-ish. But it's also so foreign to me that I didn't know how to respond to the situation. And, you know, years later, that relationship didn't work out. Years later, I met my wife, and my wife is a lot like my mom in the fact that she's very career-driven, and she likes to accomplish goals, and she likes to set goals and achieve them. And, you know, I used to joke around that she's such a go-getter, she makes coffee nervous. When my sister had her twins, I could hear my wife exit the elevator and walk down the hall, because she always wears these heels, and I could hear them blah, 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 and I go, here it comes. And she was like, what? And I said, I jokingly called her Hurricane. I said, here comes Hurricane. And they were like, what does that mean? And I was like, you'll see. And she came around the corner, and she was like, oh my God, how are you doing? You know, she was just like a ball of energy right off the bat, but you could hear her coming. And I guess in my brain the analogy was like a hurricane. You know, you get like a week's notice of, okay, here it comes. I guess hearing her footsteps sort of reminded me of that. I don't know. I thought it was a cute little joke. It was nothing. There was nothing mean involved in it. It was just something I quickly said. But anywho, so listen. Today is February the 6th, and I know that I had put out a podcast on the 1st, knowing that Groundhog Day was the next day. This past Saturday was Groundhog Day. I don't really buy into the whole Punxsutawney Phil rodent seeing his shadow type thing. I remember being a kid and it being a big deal, and we would all talk about it. And honestly, I think it's just something ritualistic that people do as sort of a tradition. I did see on the internet recently, though, that the old Punxsutawney Phil rodent decision on whether or not there was going to be an extended spring was actually wrong most of the time. That actually he only gets it right about 37% of the time, which, if you think about it, could come to just flipping a coin also. You could literally just flip a coin and go, yeah, but it's going to have a long winter. And I don't know how they decide to say whatever it is they think that Phil thinks. I mean, it's just some dudes holding up a rodent and they're saying some stuff, and it's cute. If you've ever seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, it's an adorable movie, but it's also a very lovely movie in the fact that you get sort of an in-glimpse view of a guy who has sort of a smug outlook on life, and he doesn't really like his job, and he really hates the fact that he has to go cover this thing that he thinks is a hoax. And through some weird twist of fate, he has to keep reliving the same day over and over again, and he's not sure why. He's not sure if it's, in the beginning he thinks he's crazy, or he thinks maybe I've made a mistake and I just dreamed that other day. And he sort of repeats it, and then he repeats it, and repeats it, and repeats it, and repeats it so many times that he gets to live, you know, something like 1,000 lifetimes, basically learning who all of the people in the town are, learning, he does some bad things, he like robs a bank a couple times, and he, you know, sleeps with this girl in town, figures out the right things to say to her, and there's this one woman, though, that he sort of likes, and she's the co-star, of course, Andie MacDowell. And he, over time, realizes, hey, I really do like this woman. Not just like her, but I think I love her because of all of the things that she is that I've never noticed before. And so he tries to learn tricks along the way to get her to like him. And she always, at the end of it, sees through his crap and realizes at a certain point, I can't just fake it. I have to become a better person. So he becomes a better person, you know, and by the end of it, he does evolve into a person who is genuine and who she really cares for. And there was no malice or intent in his heart other than the fact of, I've lived every life and I got no choice now but to do this, and I'm driven to do this, and I want to be a better person. And I think that's sort of an analogy for everybody in their life, in the fact that, you know, we all kind of bumble through things, but at a certain point we have to make a decision on what we want to do with our lives. And hopefully it's not too late to make a change. With it being Groundhog Day, I was actually waking up that morning thinking, oh great, I get to watch Groundhog Day, I can't wait. And I turned on the TV and Netflix was already queued up, and right off the bat on the top of the screen, it advertised a new show that they have called Russian Doll. And I was like, what is this? And it's got an actress in it that I had seen in other stuff. I Googled her to find out her name. Her name is Natasha Lyonne. A lot of people know her from the American Pie shows. She was the girl with the curly hair who, I guess, smoked and drank, and she was sort of the person that the guys would talk to on the side, and she would tell them the truth of things. And she was in Orange is the New Black. If you saw her, you'd know right away who she is. You can Google her. Anyway, this Russian Doll show is advertised. Now, not to give anything away, I'm just going to tell you what's advertised, okay? In the preview that they show you to get you to watch it, the teaser, they show her at a party, and she goes out and meets her friend, and during the course of the night, she ends up getting killed or dying by some freakish accident, or, you know, I think in the previews they show her getting hit by a car, falling downstairs, falling in a manhole. I mean, there was a lot of scenarios where she's getting killed, and whenever she dies, she immediately starts over again, standing in front of the same mirror at the same party, looking at herself. And the water's running, and there's music playing, and it's like, whoa! And at first, again, just like Groundhog Day, she thinks that this is normal. Like you know, or not normal, but she thinks this is like a dream. Like, did I dream yesterday? What's going on? And so she tries to make it another day. Now, unlike Groundhog Day, she actually makes it for a day or two sometimes. And then something happens. And in the previews, they show, you know how previews are. They're really fast paced, and there's a lot going on, and they want you to be excited and look forward to watching it, while also stringing together a theme. But there's a scene in the preview where she's on an elevator, and obviously the elevator is breaking and getting ready to fall, and it is falling, and there's people in the elevator freaking out, and she's standing next to this young guy, and she looks at him and she says, "Hey, I don't know if you got the message, but we're about to die." And he goes, "That's okay. Happens to me all the time." And she's like, "What?" And then it flashes to the next scene of more stuff happening, and you're like, wait, what just happened? So it's interesting. Like, right away it got my interest, and I was like, oh, I want to watch this. And I want to say that the show is like 8 episodes long, but they are cool. They are very cool to watch. It's cool to see the transition of her character. It's cool to see the background stories. It's cool to see how she's linked to this guy. It's cool to find out his story. It's cool that she is, to me, the perfect actress to play this role. Now, I Googled her just to find out some information, and I found out that she also struggled with drug addiction growing up, and how this was, sort of the perfect role for her to, in a way, portray this person who's dealing with a lot of substance abuse type issues and sort of a hard past. And, I didn't know how old she was. I got to thinking, I watched her in American Pie like, 20 years ago. She's got to be near 40. Turns out she's 39 years old and 5'3". And yeah. So, it's a great role. I enjoyed it. I recommend watching it. I think if anybody's into sort of the weird what-if scenarios, or if you got into watching Groundhog Day, or that one with Tom Cruise, what was that, The Edge of Tomorrow? And then I think they retitled it Live, Die, Repeat. Tom Cruise's thing was a little bit different though. In his, I think he had to die in order to start over. Like he had to, or every time he died he started over, but he had to complete a mission, and in order to complete the mission sometimes he had to die to start over on purpose. And hers was different in the fact that a lot of times she got killed. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting show, and I can't give anything away. The ending is one of those endings where you kind of want more information. You sort of get all the information, but you really need to talk it out with some people to kind of wrap your head around it. I'm going to go back and rewatch the last couple of episodes again, because it sort of goes in, well, I don't want to give anything away. I'm not going to give anything away. I'm going to tease it. This is a teaser. This is my teaser for the show, Russian Doll. Go check it out. Support her. Support them. Whoever went out on a limb with this script, I mean, holy cow, that was fascinating. So anyway, I ended up watching Russian Doll all day on Groundhog Day, and didn't watch Groundhog Day. Not that I missed anything. I mean, I've seen Groundhog Day before, and I'll probably watch it a million times more because I love Bill Murray, I love the story, I love the whole thing with Andy McDowell. I even love Ned Ryerson. I mean, but anyway, so let's talk about the Super Bowl, okay? The Super Bowl was Sunday, the Patriots and the Rams, and I know a lot of people are sick and tired of talking about the Super Bowl, and a lot of people have voiced their opinion about the fact that they thought it was the worst Super Bowl ever. Now, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to tell you all I think you're crazy, and I'll tell you why. When I was younger, there was a thriving basketball star named Michael Jordan that everybody knows, right? Michael Jordan went through several seasons where he was in the playoffs and would get beat. Their team would get beat by the 76ers or the Knicks, and they wouldn't proceed any further. And I kept thinking, man, at some point he's going to break through. This team is going to break through, and they're going to become so dominant. And I couldn't wait to cheer for the next season whenever they didn't make it. And then when they made it, I was like, oh wow, this is great. They finally done it. And in a way, I kind of thought, well, who's going to challenge them? Because more than anything, I think more than watching your favorite player or your favorite team win, is you enjoy a good matchup. You enjoy a good back and forth. It's a lot like watching the Batman Dark Knight. Everyone says that Heath Ledger was the best villain in any movie ever, and he sort of made the movie amazing. And that's true. If you don't have that character, if you don't have that polarization, you're just sort of watching your team achieve great things. Now, leading up to the Super Bowl, a lot of people thought that this was going to be an amazing offensive matchup. Everyone was saying, oh man, I can't believe it. They're probably going to score like 60 points or more. And I don't even know what the over-under was. I heard that phrase used on ESPN radio. People were talking about how they predicted it was going to score a whole bunch of points. And it was interesting that going into the game, both teams seemed to morph themselves a little bit and become extremely good on defense. Now, I'll give it up that the Rams sort of made some miscues. You can tell that Jared Goff was a little bit nervous being in the Super Bowl. I don't know what was going on with Todd Gurley, why he didn't carry more than he did, unless it was the fact that they thought they had a game plan that would work. But obviously the preparation of the Patriots paid off, and the execution. This matchup reminded me a lot of watching the Chicago Bulls back in the day, back when they were really good, play against the Seattle Supersonics when they were very good. Now, the reason I say Seattle Supersonics is because there was a time where that team matched the Bulls just perfectly. I mean, from every person on the roster, the Sonics could do almost as much damage on offense and defense as the Bulls. This was after Jordan had become the scoring champion and people had challenged him to up his defense. They were like, yeah, he can score, but he can't play defense. And then he won like 3 Defensive Players of the Year award. Well, in this particular matchup, this particular game that I watched, he was matched up with Gary Payton. Now, Gary Payton played for the Seattle Supersonics, and he was so good on defense that his nickname was the Glove. Now, Gary Payton could mirror Michael Jordan move for move. It was like watching a dance. They battled it out all game long, just mirroring movements of arms and legs and swatting at balls and getting hands in their face and making them really exert themselves to their limit to make anything happen. And at times, they would back off all the other players on their team and go, just move. I want to take this guy one-on-one. And it was sort of a thing of, you got to watch 2 of the best superstars in their prime match each other and challenge each other. And there were times where Jordan won, and there was times where Gary Payton won. But there was a moment in the game where Jordan just edged out his talent over Gary Payton. I mean, just minimal. I mean, so close that I was watching it with like a laser focus going, I can't believe I'm watching this. This is the greatest game I've ever watched. I got to see a similar game in football where the Packers during their prime was matched up against the San Francisco 49ers in a playoff game, and it was one of those things where every single play was matched up perfectly. Defense was playing their tails off. Offense, if they got anything off, was barely there, and I was excited because of watching the effort of these guys try and cancel each other out. It is so much harder to play defense than it is offense, because on defense you got so many penalties that could happen if you grab somebody's jersey or if you hold them or if you name it. And to play that level of defense in a Super Bowl setting, that to me that's what made this Super Bowl the best Super Bowl I've seen. I watched these guys play, and if they achieved any kind of first down or any kind of passing play or any kind of run play, it was because everybody was doing their job to the best of their ability, and the defense was doing their best job of stopping them. I mean, it was incredible. Now, with that being said, it's obvious that the Patriots had a little more talent and a little more ability on their side. Obviously, Brady's experience helps out. And who would have thought going into this game that Julian Edelman would be the difference maker? That he would be able to separate like he did, being single and double covered. I mean, there were times in the game where he just would make people miss him so much. It's like, how did he even get open? But because he did it consistently and was able to edge out his opponent, he was able to achieve those first downs and able to move the ball down the field. It was impressive. It was very impressive to me. I know a lot of people talked about Stephon Gilmore catching the interception towards the end of the game when the Rams were driving down looking to score a touchdown. And a lot of people say that it was Goff's fault because he was falling back and he shouldn't have thrown that ball and all this other stuff. And that's possibly true. But you also got to give Stephon Gilmore credit in the fact that he shut down his corner for most of the game. And when it mattered, he came up with the ball. You know, the Patriots have always prided themselves on the fact that they take less money for every player so that they can afford to have better talent across the board. You know, there's nobody that would argue that any quarterback playing today shouldn't be the highest paid other than Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the best. Tom Brady has the most Super Bowls. Tom Brady is often referred to as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Now, if you pay Tom Brady the most money of any quarterback, then you can't afford the talent that you have on the rest of your team, and then your team doesn't win. Look at the top 5 that are paid right now as quarterbacks. None of those teams even made the playoffs. Okay? The money that you pay your quarterback does not mean that you end up going to the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl. This should be a lesson for all teams and all players in the fact of if you are selfless in the fact of you know what you can achieve if you give up something, whether it's your time, your effort, or your money, and you've got an organization that's like-minded. I mean, how rare is it to have a situation where your coach is your GM and your GM says, hey, listen, I got a plan and I can prove it. And that's what Belichick does. So, hats off to the Patriots. You guys deserve it. To me, it was one of the best Super Bowls I've watched. I don't care if everybody's like, oh, it sucks. Okay, well, everybody has their interest, right? I enjoy a great defensive game. I really, and the way this defense was played, it wasn't boring to me. It was exciting. I mean, if I was at the game, I'd be super excited with how close it was. Maybe it made it better because I was at the house and I could see all of the close-up, slow-motion replays in my living room. And I was sitting in my, basketball shorts and t-shirt. I don't know. Maybe it's less exciting if you're in a crowd or a group and you're just like, oh, I was waiting for something exciting to happen. Well, to me, every play was exciting. So, I don't know. Take from it what you will. I'm going to wrap this up a little bit earlier today because this is a solo podcast. Let me reset my camera because I got more to talk about. Hang on. I always have to do that right about the 28-minute mark. I am going to wrap this up a little bit early today because this is a solo podcast. I have plans for another interview coming up. I think we'll do it Friday. My buddy Greg is coming into town. You guys have heard Greg on the podcast before. I think I've done one recording him on my phone. There was a time where he did a call-in interview, and I held my phone up to a microphone. And that one was an hour and 30 minutes long of basically us trying to figure out stuff to talk about. I think we got into a rhythm, and then we got off to a tangent. But anyway, he's coming into town. I have plans of taking the day off, and we're going to see Bert Kreischer up in Charlotte. He's going to be playing at the Knight Auditorium. It's near the stadium. It's near the Panther Stadium. Anyway, we got tickets to go to the 9:30 show. I've talked about this before a little bit. When tickets went on sale, my wife and I were actually on the way to Disney, and she was like, hey, Bert's tickets went on sale. And my first thought was, how do you know Bert's tickets went on sale? And she's like, I listened to Leanne's podcast, Wife of the Party. And I was like, oh, okay, they probably talked about it on there. Yeah, okay. And she's like, have you got tickets yet? And I was like, no. Well, I had bought tickets while we were in the car driving down the road because we discussed it and we were like, yeah, let's buy tickets. Last year, I had gone to see Bert perform at the Comedy Zone. Now, the Comedy Zone is a club And I don't know how many seats it has. Hang on. Something's happening on the thing here. I think Anchor has something wrong with it. It only recorded a 30-minute episode. So if you're listening to this is part 2. Anyway, I had gone to see Bert perform at the Comedy Zone in Charlotte, and he did a great show, but I want to say that they only seat maybe 300 people, and this auditorium holds close to 1,800 people. So it's going to be a lot more people, a lot more seats. Tickets were still only $35 a piece if you got like a regular seat in the audience. But I noticed that they had a special seating up close in the first 2 rows. Was like $150 a piece. And I was like, ooh, that's expensive. $150. And my wife was like, yes, but hear me out. She's like, you know that Disney's my thing. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, okay, Bert's your thing. If you're going to go see Bert, wouldn't you rather sit in the front row? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, we can afford it. I mean, this is your, you know, you work hard, you make a good living, and you want to be able to afford the things that you enjoy. Here's something that you enjoy more than anything. So get the tickets you want. Let's look and see if they're available. Let's look and see, you know, what it would be. And I was like, okay. So we justified it and looked online, and sure enough, there was front row center tickets available. And I got the ones that are right in the front center. 2 of them. And my first thought was, I'll take my brother Alex. Well, it turns out my brother Alex is coaching basketball right now, and they're doing great. I've seen highlights of them, you know, beating some of the top teams in the state. And so he's probably going to be playing in the playoffs during this process. So we were like, all right, well, that's not going to work. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just invite one of my other friends. Well, here's the strange reality is, as you become an adult and you raise kids, if you don't cultivate friendships of people that are friends with your kids' friends, then you don't really have friends, because the friends that you have in high school oftentimes move away. In my case, I was the first one to move away when I joined the Marine Corps. And when I came home from the Marine Corps, they were all gone off in different directions, living their life, kind of, you know, figuring out where they're supposed to be. So, in a strange way, I kind of grew up not having any friends. I just became a dad. I worked. I had work friendships, and you know, people I enjoy spending time with at work. But it was just one of those things where when you got done with work, you tended to not hang out with those people as much. You tended to do more with your kids, or do more with the family, or oh, we got to go out of town because, you know, because of whatever. And you know, now we're empty nesters. And now it's time to create friendships. And now it's time to reach out. So I did. I reached out to a few people. Well, a lot of them have stuff they have to do because of work. Some of the work friendships that I have, they work the opposite shift of what I work. So they're awake while I'm asleep, and they're asleep while I'm awake. And it wasn't going to work out. I talked to a couple guys about it, and it just wasn't going to work out with their sleep schedule. They would actually have to take the day off and reverse their sleep schedule in order to stay on page with what we were doing. And that's not fair to them. I mean, I totally get that. So I run it by my buddy Greg. One day he and I were on the phone, and I said, hey, you know, I got these tickets, and I already got a hotel room, and would you like to go? And he said he thought about it, and he was like, well, yeah, let's do that. So anyway, we're going to do that. We're going to sit down and have a podcast ahead of time. And we're probably going to talk about this again. So just deal with it. It'll be fine. We're not going to make a big deal out of it as much. Well, I'll make a big deal of it, but he's not. I mean, we'll talk about other stuff. I'm sure we'll make it interesting. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and thank you for all the kind comments on the interviews. Like I said, this is a process, and we're getting better. I'm planning on meeting my mom at lunch for some King Hefe today, so I might see Kyle there. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye.